Ciao ragazzi! In this video you will learn how to use regular are, ere and ire verbs in Italian. As you know, there are different groups of verbs in Italian. Some verbs are unpredictable. They are called irregular verbs, but you can think of them as rebel verbs because they don't follow the rules. They need to be memorized. But there are three other groups of verbs that are regular. They are verbs that end in are verbs, verbs that end in ere verbs, and verbs that end in ire verbs. So these three groups of verbs are regular, which means that they follow a set of rules. They are predictable, and there are patterns that you learn. And once you learn those patterns, you can use literally hundreds of verbs correctly in your Italian speaking and writing. So let's look at the first group of verbs now, are verbs. This is the largest and most common group of verbs. So here we have a verb table, and on the left-hand side we have the subject pronouns. So these are the words for I, you, he, she, we, etc. The subject pronouns tell us who is carrying out the action. So in Italian they are io, tu, lui, lei, noi, voi, and loro. At the top of our verb table we have the infinitive verb. This is the infinitive verb here. We've used the verb tifare as an example. So tifare means to support a team. In English, the infinitive of a verb is always to something. So to do, to eat, to sleep. In this case, to support. But another way of remembering what the infinitive is just to think of it as the name of the verb or the title of the verb. So the first step that we need to take is to remove the infinitive ending. These are the last three letters of the verb, and in this case it's the are ending. So now that we've removed the ending, what we are left with is called the stem of the verb. So in this case, it's tif, T-I-F. Think of the stem of a flower. The stem supports or holds up the rest of the flower. So the stem is very important in our verb. Our next step is to copy the stem into all of the rows. So all of the versions of this verb will start with our stem, tif. Lastly, we need to add the endings to complete the verb. So for are verbs, the endings are o, I, a, iamo, ate, ano. So we now have a conjugated verb, a verb that has been changed to suit the different subject pronouns. So, I support, tifo. You support, tifi. He or she supports, tifa. We support, tifiamo. You plural, all of you support, tifate. And they support, tifano. So let's look at the next group of verbs, ere verbs. Here we have an example of an ere verb, correre, to run. So our initial steps are the same. We remove the ending, and this time it's an ere, an ere ending. And again, we are left with the stem, which is cor. So cor is our stem, and we use it to start all of our verb forms below. And now we simply add our endings. So for ere verbs, they are o, I, e, jamo, ete, ono. So, I run, corro. You run, corri. He or she runs, corre. We run, corriamo. You, plural, run, correte. And they run, corrono. Our last group is the ire group, and an example from that group is the verb sentire, to hear or to feel. So again, we remove our infinitive ending, and again, we're left with the stem of the verb. In this case, it's sent. We start off all of our conjugated forms with our stem. Sent, all the way down. And now we add our conjugated endings, our ire verb endings. These are o, I, e, jamo, ite, ono. So I hear, sento. You hear, senti. He or she hears, sente. We hear, sentiamo. You, plural, hear, all of you hear, sentite. And they hear, sentono. So to summarize, here is a table of our 3 verb groups. For are verbs, our endings are o, I, a, jamo, ate, ano. Ere verbs, o, I, e, jamo, ete, ono. And ire verbs, o, I, e, jamo, ite, ono. So in this table we can see that there are lots of similarities between the groups. When you are talking about yourself using io, the verb will always end in o. When you are talking to someone, tu, the verb will always end in I. And when you are referring to us, noi, the verb will always end in jamo. For ere and ire verbs, the lui and lei form ends in e, and the loro form ends in ono. So there are lots of similarities that will help you. With lots of practice, this whole process becomes much easier over time, and you will eventually get to a point where you won't have to even think about your endings. It will become instinctive and automatic. So continue to practice. Arrivederci e buon lavoro.